ymmärtää tietysti se paine, mikä tuolla on katteen.
We all have no grip. You all need to leave a little bit of space. But expect the next time the same, you know?
The Azerbaijan F1 Grand Prix has just wrapped up, and although there wasn't too much action on track, there has been a lot of action in and around the paddock. Starring Max Verstappen and George Russell, as Russell's actions left Verstappen furious. Did George Russell cross the line, or is Max Verstappen just annoyed he lost a chance at more points? Max Verstappen had hoped to challenge for the sprint race victory from third on the grid, but that did not happen. He collided with George Russell on the opening lap, and the damage he incurred stopped him from battling for the win, which enraged the Red Bull driver. I just don't understand why you need to take so much risk on lap 1, understeering into my sidepod, he stated shortly after the argument with the Mercedes driver. Verstappen had a quick conversation with Russell before the interview. We all have cold tyres and it's easy to lock up and it's easy to explain it. Oh mate, I locked up, look at the onboard. The Dutchman later impacted the wall momentarily after colliding with Russell, although this did not cause the damage. Not the wall, just turn 2. There's a hole in the sidepod. It doesn't look good, but we're focusing on tomorrow. Max Verstappen's viewpoint is not shared by George Russell. The Red Bull Racing driver blames Russell fully for the damage to his RB19, but the 25-year-old Briton disagrees. He claimed to be ahead on the approach to the turn despite not having watched the tape. I thought he was coming over to shake my hand to thank me for a nice fight, but he was obviously a bit angrier than I expected. For my part, I was on the inside, I was ahead at the apex, and I was really surprised that he was trying to hold his position, Russell explained. Russell, on the other side, blames the Dutchman more. It's a sprint race on a street circuit on cold tyres. He knows the risk in that position. There was no intention to seek contact, but he put me in a difficult position. In the end, it was a big risk for both of us, and it was clear that he made contact with the wall. That's all there is to say about it. Russell continued, I started racing when I was 8 years old, and in karting, if you're on the inside of the apex, it's your corner. And that's the basic principle of racing, you know? Max is incredibly experienced. He's an incredibly good racer, and he has a great car. He knows this, and when you try to overtake him on the outside, you take a risk. He was lucky he didn't get a puncture. I try to give him as much space as possible, but you know, at a start like this, it's a challenge, so there's not much more to say. What did Russell say to Verstappen shortly after? I can't even remember, to be honest. I think I said we had cold tyres, I was on the inside, and he said we all had cold tyres. But like I said, that was a risk he took. I was quite surprised that he tried to hold the position, but I have to watch it again. Maybe my opinion will change once I see it. Nothing deliberate, but you know, I'm here to fight, I'm here to win. And I won't let him pass just because he's Max Verstappen, said a firm Russell. Despite the space left on the side of the RB19 by George Russell's Mercedes, Max Verstappen finished third in the Baku sprint race. Verstappen remarked during the post-race news conference that the German team's ability to not touch Red Bulls was evidently challenging. Verstappen responded in the yes when asked if he gave Russell enough room in the early parts of the race. In my opinion, he did. I mean, we came through the corner without him hitting the wall on the inside, so I think I left enough space. But apparently, it is difficult for them not to hit a Red Bull car, the Red Bull driver stated. The car jumped around a lot and skidded in some weird places, explained the two-time world champion. I have to look at the data to know exactly how much damage was done. It's not great, and of course you try to close the gap a bit. Of course you're constantly in dirty air, and I think my tyres got a bit too hot at 1.2, Verstappen said. Clearly, Max Verstappen was dissatisfied with the actions of his colleague George Russell, who created a massive hole in Verstappen's RB19 during the Baku sprint race. The Mercedes driver's following reaction upset the Red Bull driver even more. The entire world witnessed the post-sprint race brawl between Verstappen and Russell, with Verstappen calling the Mercedes driver a D-head. At that moment, of course, I think so, Verstappen said. According to the Dutchman, his statement was entirely motivated by Russell's reaction. If you now say that was not my intention, that's already something, the two-time world champion continued. That is not what Russell stated. Rather, the 25-year-old British driver directed Verstappen to the onboard film and the fact that he had cold tyres. We all had cold tyres, Verstappen replied. It's just a bit curlish. Verstappen is also faced with Russell's remarks, in which the Mercedes driver declared that he would not just let someone pass him because he's Max Verstappen. That remark does not sit well with the Red Bull driver. I didn't say that either, but you can also attack me without attacking my car, Verstappen bounced. Russell contended that Verstappen was taking a risk by remaining on the outside and attempting to preserve his position in this manner. And that's not allowed because Princess George is sitting there, the Dutchman replied sharply. He also rejects the notion that he could have done the same thing the opposite way around. "Oh yeah, I would have driven him full into his side pod of course," Verstappen said. "Really smart." When confronted with Verstappen's comments, in which the two-time world champion referred to Russell as a princess, the Mercedes driver plainly does not want to bring up the matter again. "I've spoken a huge amount about it," he said. Russell did, however, return to the footage in the interim. "I mean, I've got to be honest, when I watched the video back, I was a little bit underwhelmed with everything. It's a lot of talk has been made about it, and I think it's because the rest of the race was pretty unexciting. So, you know, it's history. We're both hard racers," he concluded. In addition, he's not changed his view about who is the most to blame. There was a racing incident, according to Russell. "It was hard racing. I think it was, a racing incident. And if the same happens today, I'd do the exact same if on the inside. I'd expect nothing less from Max either," he continued. Russell understands Verstappen's outburst. "We all have views in the heat of the moment. I probably would have a similar opinion if I was in his shoes. But as I said yesterday, we're big boys and we move on," Russell said. While Russell does not require an apology from Verstappen, he believes the Dutchman should behave differently in the future. "No, I don't need an apology at all. But he's a two-time champion, leading the championship again at the moment. It doesn't bother me, but he lets himself down a little bit with these sorts of comments. Max is a super good guy, a great driver. Words like that are just a bit unnecessary." Even though Russell doesn't require an apology and is over it, it doesn't mean it should easily be forgotten. As pundits and other people amongst the grid were quick to point out that Verstappen of all people shouldn't be making these comments. Given Verstappen's racing history, the pundits and TV hosts find Verstappen's comments against George Russell somewhat disingenuous. Thus, Will Buxton was harsh of Max Verstappen's comments during the Baku sprint race. "It is a bit rich, isn't it? With Max Verstappen saying that a driver is taking some unnecessary risks," Buxton stated in his analysis after the sprint race. "Max has made a career out of putting in gutsy moves, getting his elbows out, getting down and dirty and running wheel to wheel with people. He's fought drivers hard his entire career, but he does not like being race hard himself, particularly not when he's fighting for a championship, and I think that really showed today. He's thinking about the championship every single time one of these moments happen," Buxton continued. He complained about Lewis in Australia. He complained here with Russell too. Max is thinking about the championship. He's thinking about every position lost, every potential point lost. He's thinking long game, and that is why he's getting frustrated. Perhaps he is now seeing the other side of the coin, of the way he used to drive with that elbows out mentality, and how other drivers might have judged some of his moves. Damon Hill wasn't pleased with Verstappen's actions as well. "We should just give Max Verstappen the championship, and just not bother with anything else," argued Hill sarcastically. "Sorry, but that's just being salty. A sore loser. It's fair for everyone, it's the same competition. He should be thinking about tomorrow and the championship, and putting it behind him. This is the sort of mindset you see in the sort of people like Schumacher and Senna. They will not accept that they have any part to play in stuff that happens," Hill continued his criticism. If you cast your mind back to, let's say, Monza with Lewis Hamilton, he just didn't back out of the corner. He is a hard racer, they're both hard racers, George and Max, and this is what happens when you get a rock and a hard place together. It looks like, to be the world champion, you have to have the default, "I'm in the right, everyone else is out of step," Hill added. "I don't agree. You have to take the rough with the smooth. It's not going to always be good. There will be times when you get it wrong. He qualified lower than his teammate. He should understand, being on the outside, that he will be vulnerable to attack. In many ways, he should have been more cautious." What are your thoughts on the situation? Is Verstappen taking it too far? Should he stay out of discussions like this? Would he have done the same as Russell if he were in that position? Let us know your thoughts on last weekend's biggest fight on the grid in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.